the deals put together.
Yeah.
So I'll be quiet.
Oh, that's all right. I'd like to hear about that though. That's, maybe we'll talk at the end, just briefly, because it's interesting to see, if we can get either, I know we've been really creative and doing all sorts of, fill in the gap financing, whatever you want to call it. But if others have some good ideas, that's terrific.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about it at the end.
Okay. All right. I'm sure Dawn is on. How are we doing, Dawn?
Good. We have a quorum.
Okay, perfect. So maybe we should call the meeting to order.
Absolutely. I do want to just remind everyone that we are live streaming and recording the meeting. Both of those have started. So we'll go ahead with the roll call. Cindy Butts. Wendy Clark.
Here.
Heidi DeWeingart.
Here.
Claudio Gualtieri. Commissioner Mascara Bruno. Matt Puglisi.
Present.
Lisa Tepper Bates. Greg Ugalde.
Present.
We have a quorum in attendance for the meeting.
Okay, terrific. Well, first item on our agenda is the financing of West Ridge. It's a New Haven project and to be presented by Trayvon.
Actually, Trayvon had a family emergency, so I'll be presenting.
Sorry. Okay, Debbie, thank you.
You're welcome. So this request is for the approval of taxable bond proceeds for a construction to permanent first mortgage loan of up to $12.7 million and a construction to permanent second mortgage of up to $1 million from the Opportunity Fund to West Ridge Apartments, LLC, an entity formed by the Queech Corporation. The first mortgage will be evidenced by a two-note structure. First, a construction note in a principal amount of approximately $4.7 million, paying interest only at a rate of up to 6.25% for a term of up to 24 months. Now, this is a special rate, which is conditioned upon the loan initial closing by December 31st of 2024. If the closing does not happen by that date, the rate is subject to change, but will not exceed 7.8%. Second note is a permanent note in a principal amount of approximately $8 million at a rate of up to 7.25%, payable interest only on amounts advanced for up to 24 months and converting to an amortizing permanent mortgage with a term of 35 years amortized over 40. The second mortgage loan will be evidenced by one note in a principal amount of up to $1 million.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Sure.
So why the mismatch? Why not have a 40-year AM instead of a 35-year?
That may be a question for Hazim, but the product is a 35-year product, and we do allow an amortization over 40 years.
Well, there's 2-year construction, but then you're still only up to 37. So I'm not sure I understand that. Okay, well, we can ask after. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm here.
Hazim.
Yes.
So why the mismatch?
So the product has always been for 35 years, and then from there, what we generally would do is to look at what can be supported by the project, and we adjust accordingly. So the mismatch, let me see here.
So it is technically a 37-year term.
Yeah.
The first two are interest only, and then the 35 is the permanent term.
Right. So I think that this is just more how we've been presenting the concept of 35 is 35 for the perm without taking into consideration the construction. But when it comes to if you try to say what is the length of the perm including construction, it is going to be 37.
Right. But we still have this little tail of 3 years and obviously a small dollar amount, but I don't know, it just seems cleaner if we could do 40 and 40, but I mean, I just.
Yeah, but just with the understanding that the 40-year amortization was just to keep the debt service down so that we can produce more debt out of this. The 35-year term is what the product term is. And let's understand that it's most likely not even going to get to 35 years, let alone the 40. So we could talk about cleaning that up. We'll work with Hazim just to make sure that we meet his product demands.
Well, I mean, I know amortizations had gotten longer and longer. I mean, we used to do 30-year loans, right?
Right.
And with 35, it's 40. So I don't know if it makes any sense to make our product a 40 or a 38, because you could add 2 years interest only. I don't know. And you're right, most of them don't get there, but
They're not gonna
sometimes.
get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it could, you're right. I mean, because the tail is like a short, like a 3-year balloon or something, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So it may have to do, I don't know, Hazim, does it potentially have to do with the steepness of the yield curve at a certain point? Because, we are borrowing to lend the money. And so it could be that the tax exempt curve is steep at
Mhm.
the long end, and maybe it's better to stay on this side of 35
Yeah.
when you're bonds,
Maybe.
so that could be part of
Okay.
it. But
Yeah, it's a detail. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So I was talking about the second mortgage, which
Yes.
is up to $1 million at an interest rate of 1% with a construction term of 24 months and a permanent term of 35 years. This loan shall accrue interest on outstanding principal at a rate not to exceed 1%, payable interest only during the 24-month construction period, and then will accrue at an interest rate of 1% during the 35-year permanent term, and will be payable from 25% of adjusted cash flow after the deferred developer fee is paid off. Westridge received an award of 9% low-income housing tax credits in the 2023 round. This development consists of new construction of 64 units of elderly and young disabled housing in one 7-story building and the renovation and relocation of a historic home that is on the site. There will be 62 one-bedroom units, 2 two-bedroom units in the new building, and the historic home contains 3 bedrooms. 14 units will serve households at or below 25% of AMI. 12 units will serve households at or below 30% of AMI. 26 units will serve households at or below 50% AMI, and 13 units will be unrestricted market rate units. 14 units will provide supportive housing for intellectually disabled clients of the Department of Developmental Services, and these units will benefit from rental subsidies through the State Rental Assistance Program. In addition, 38 other units will receive project-based Section 8 rental subsidies. The City of New Haven has also provided approval of a 17-year tax abatement. The project will be built to Passive House standards as well as LEED Platinum, and will also include solar panels to offset greater than 90% of the annual energy demand for site and interior common area lighting. Westridge Apartments LLC is an entity formed by the developer, the Queech Corporation. Queech Corporation worked with CHFA last in 2005 on Park Ridge, which is an LAHTC development that is next to this site. Their headquarter offices are in Branford. Giordano Construction of Branford will serve as the general contractor. They were the contractor for the aforementioned Park Ridge. And there is an identity of interest between the GC and the developer. Merritt Properties is the property management company with headquarters in East Berlin, Connecticut. They have a portfolio consisting of 10 properties that are currently in the CHFA portfolio. The project architect is Quisenberry Arcari Malik, based in Farmington. They have provided architectural services for many CHFA projects in the past, such as Northside Terraces and Lawn Hill Terrace. The development is located near Southern Connecticut State University and West Rock Ridge State Park. The neighborhood contains several other schools, churches, restaurants, and retail establishments. The total development cost is $33,694,077, which represents a per unit cost of $518,370. The proposed financing structure includes approximately $4.8 million in 9% tax credit equity, $4 million of DOH state funding, $2 million of DOH federal funding, $1 million from the City of New Haven, approximately $1.6 million in developer cash equity, and approximately $1.6 million deferred developer fee. They will also receive about $488,000 in energy rebates. Strengths of this transaction: it is a new construction, so it will have construction designs and unit finishes that are current and consistent with newer developments in the local and regional markets. The developer owns similar developments, as I mentioned, which is right next to the subject, and has reported a significant waiting list for those developments. Rental subsidies will enhance the feasibility of the development, and the site has good local and regional access as provided by Interstate Route 91 and 95. Challenges include, this is the first 9% deal the developer has done since 2005. Parking for the property will be limited to 34 vehicles, which is a low ratio. And typically, the typical challenge of increased interest rates and other market conditions that could affect costs during construction. Mitigating factors include the development team has engaged a development consultant and a management company with LAHTC experience. In the developer's experience with its other elderly and young disabled developments, most of the residents are not anticipated to own cars, which leaves most of the parking spaces available for employees and support service providers for the residents. There is also a bus stop providing public transit within a quarter mile of the site, and the bus line provides a direct connection to the train station. And lastly, the developer could seek additional funding sources from future competitive rounds if necessary. I'm happy to take any questions.
So
Great.
Heidi,
Yep.
so Debbie, when I look at this and I see the challenge being parking, I assume that you mean that at a certain point, you just can't take on any more tenants that need spots for their cars, right? Is that what the challenge is?
Yeah, there's 60 something units and there's only 34 parking spaces, which is less than
And,
one.
and that's why you mentioned the bus routes and everything being nearby. And
Right.
so it's interesting because, we just had a informal comment before about how complicated things are getting. When you see that list of everybody that's involved, what happens when one or two people aren't in sync quite yet? Does it stop everything? Does everybody have to be lined up in this case? That's quite a list that have to be marching to the same tune.
Are you talking about the funding sources?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, it is sometimes a challenge coordinating everybody, but we've worked with the city as well as we work very often with DOH. So I think everybody knows what to expect, which helps. But yeah, it can sometimes be challenging coordinating everybody and their different funding source requirements.
But what's been the delay? These guys were awarded the credits in 23. It's 24, and we're going to change the rate if they don't close in another 6 months, which sounds like they may not, right? Because we're talking about it. So what has been the delay?
Well, they haven't done a development like this in a very long time, so it took them a little while to get their feet under them. They were awarded the forward commitment. We did have to forward commit somebody from 2023, so they did receive an award of 2024 credits. So they're not in danger of missing their place in service date for that reason.
Okay.
But they went out to bid several times and had a lot of trouble getting the bids to come back in a reasonable cost. They did encounter a cost a financing gap and had to go back to the city as well as DOH as well as to us to fill the gap. We added the opportunity funds in. They were not originally contemplated in the deal. DOH has kicked in additional funding, as has the city. So it just took some time to get it together to a point where it penciled out. The city funds do have a requirement to close by the end of September. So we've already started preparing them for what is expected for closing. And I believe that there's a good chance they will close by that time.
I guess we're a little nervous about the developer. How about the builder? And they're related, but different entities.
Right. I don't know much about the builder. I don't know if anyone from tech services is on that may know more about that.
Yeah, I think, but we're comfortable with both the developer and the builder. The developer, we have other tax credits from earlier years that still haven't closed, primarily because of the complexities in the market, getting pricing, holding pricing, and then to Greg's point, lining up all the different layers in the capital stack. Tech Services reviewed the GC, and there are specific requirements that they have to meet in order for us to accept them as part of the development team, and they met all that criteria. The team is comfortable that this development team is going to be able to produce this project.
We get a construction bond typically, do we?
Yes.
Okay. All right, anybody else, any other questions?
Yeah, Heidi, I don't know if you can see my
Lisa.
hand here.
Sorry,
Hi,
I can't.
Apolo-
Hi.
apologies
see
for
your
being
picture.
tardy.
It's all right.
So I just wanted to suggest that we might want to try and think a little bit differently when we refer to parking. I understand what you're saying here, that it's a low ratio, but I think it might be time to try and think differently about that. I don't know what statistics are available, but with regard to the DDS supportive housing, my best guess is that that is a much lower than average rate of car ownership. And given also the incomes for the different units, you're going to find, especially in a city which has some of our densest public transportation, you're going to find a much lower rate of car ownership than you would. And so it might be useful to us going forward to think a little differently if we can, if the data is available, Pat, to say what is the average car ownership given the units, right? And then calculate differently, because I'm going to bet you, if I were a betting person, that 34 is going to be just fine in terms of the population you're looking to house and the cars you're going to find there. So maybe we can put some ideas in the hopper about how to calculate differently as to realistically what the demand would be. I don't think that's low given the way it's described here.
Yeah. And Lisa, I think you would win that bet. And we are currently, we've had several conversations with the city of Bridgeport on two of their projects, and the city of Bridgeport has eliminated their parking ratio requirements. There are about 70 cities across the country and in Canada that have gone away from using parking minimums. So we are in the process. We've been doing some research. And we are looking to change our thinking in terms of parking, especially in inner city, where there is a strong transportation infrastructure, TOD TOD locations and such. So yes, we're in the process of doing that. Just preliminarily, it seems that on average, around 60% of affordable families own cars. And so we've kind of been working with that. Our current guidelines are a little outdated. We understand that, and we've been providing some relief. So I agree, this particular population is probably not going to have that many families that have cars. And the other thing I should throw in is that we're also looking at the potential for like rideshare options, other creative means of getting people to where they need to go. Bus routes are great, but if they're only coming twice a day and you have an emergency in the middle, you're going to need to be able to get where you need to go. We're looking at walkability scores. We've looked around at what other municipalities and other HFAs are requiring in terms of parking. So we've got a little bit of work ahead of us, but we're on the topic, and hopefully we'll have something for you soon.
Yeah, that's great. And Pat, when you say 60% of low-income families have cars, who are these low-income families? Is that a national or a?
Yeah, it's a national average, 60 AMI and below on average. So that's just to give you a sense of what you're really looking at in terms of parking needs. We're looking at what's available on off street. We're trying to be very creative in how we're coming up.
No, and that's great that you have some data, Pat. But again, having worked very intensively both in the cities in Connecticut and in the rural areas, it's very different. 80% of low-income families in Eastern Connecticut or more have cars because they must. Right? When you get to New Haven and Hartford, I'm going to guarantee you that number is well under 60%. Because they can't afford it and they don't have to have them. So 60% is that's so blanket, I think, as cannot be helpful when we look at a housing development like this one. And I totally understand the data may be hard to get your hands on, but it's really important to size it according to the specifics of the area we're looking at. I would suggest.
And
Thank
we're also going to be reaching out to our, we have 40,000 units under our management. So we do have some empirical data that we can grab from our existing projects.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So know that there's 14 market rate units here who may have a higher density of cars. And I don't know if these
Yeah.
spots get assigned or whether there's just first come, first serve, and maybe there's some on street parking. I have no idea, but a mixed project like this one may have a little higher needs than,
Yeah.
I get the seniors, maybe not, may not, but market rate may have more. So who knows? It's Greg.
I'll make a motion that we approve this as presented.
Okay. Okay, any more comments, questions, concerns? No, okay, Dawn, can you call the roll, please?
Cindy Butts, Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWeingart,
Aye.
Claudio Gualtieri, Commissioner Mascara-Bruno, Matt Puglisi,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have revisions to the mobile manufactured home loan and refinancing program to be presented by Lisa.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Staff is recommending recommending approval of the merging of the mobile manufactured home loan program and purchase program and the refinancing into a single program. And the proposed revisions to help improve accessibility for Connecticut residents to acquire affordable homes or lower their housing costs. The significant changes that we were looking at is to reduce or increase the loan to value and reduce the down payment requirement or equity requirement. Currently, we require 20% equity or down payment. We'd like to increase that to 100% loan to value with no down payment required. And we have capped the loan amount and the sales price. Well, the loan amount not to exceed $150,000. So if someone is to purchase a home, a mobile home that costs more than that, they would have to pay the difference in down payment to get to that $150,000 amount. Our current
Average cost of a mobile home? Do you have
Our-
any idea?
the average cost of the ones that we have financed is $114,000.
Okay.
So
You think
it's
average?
yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable average
Okay.
across the board. If anything, it would be, I think, less, not more. But yeah, I do think it's I do know that ours is 114,000. I wasn't able to obtain information on the others.
Okay.
And that's without the land, right, Lisa?
Correct. This is for ones that rent, pay lot rent. Yep. And also we wanted to do the interest rate not to exceed 3%. Currently for a purchase, our rates are set at current market rates, which is 6.75%. And again, we've only closed 4 since January 1st, 2023. And of course, on the refi, we'll be increasing it from 1% up to 3% at this time. But again, we haven't done any at the 1%. So that's something to take into consideration. It wasn't, and again, I think it's the equity requirement that is preventing people from being able to refinance. The loan term would be 15 or 30 years. And just to mention, financing of mobile and manufactured homes has become a rising priority in the state. In addition to the Mobile Home Advisory Council, of which one of the goals is to prioritize broader use of mobile homes as affordable housing, last year the General Assembly established a mobile home Financing Working Group to expand access to financing for mobile homes. Based on our current program's down payment requirement, a home buyer purchasing a manufactured home for $114,000, which is our average, could be expected to pay almost $30,000 combined down payment and closing costs at settlement. This is virtually impossible for most low to moderate income borrowers. With a 0% down payment requirement, these borrowers would still be required to come up with almost $7,000 for closing costs. So there would still be an investment made into the transaction. If we consider the highest loan size permitted under the enhanced program, which is the $150,000, the payments for borrowers would range from $1,182 to $1,482, depending on the cost of the lot rent and the taxes, which are included. My estimate is it includes lot rent of $400 to $700 per month. I have heard of a $700 one recently. And that's much more reasonable than the median rent of $2,000 in the state of Connecticut. Additionally, when calculating using CHFA's average of $114,000 sales price, the payment would be even less. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, Lisa, when I look at this and you picture what some of these properties some of these loans would be using for collateral, at 100%, it doesn't give a ton of room for disrepair and for the collateral holding its value. Just curious, would it make more sense to do two separate loans and have the last 20% and maybe even some of the closing costs included in like a second portion of the loan, so that you have any equity shortfall upon disrepair or the need to move on the collateral? It's in the smaller loan amount. I don't know if it makes any difference, but I just know that these things, if you have a bad situation and people realize that they're not walking away clean, you can eat into that 100% pretty quickly.
Now, I probably let Hazim opine on this, but I would say that whether it's a first or a second, it's still a risk with these programs. But I also feel that based on the initial investment that they have to make and the fact that this is probably one of the most affordable types of housing in the state, I would venture to say that they would be less likely to, even with the depreciation, less likely to default, because that's really, where do you live for that? Where else are you going to go? But Hazim might have more to say about the first and the second. I know he was on earlier, so.
Yeah, so Greg, when we were devising this, the idea was to look at it from CHFA's point of view, in trying to develop the program and how we were going to book the receivable, whether or not it's going to be two pieces, the senior and the junior, or is one. And the fact that we are backing both for all intents and purposes, we thought that for a recording standpoint, we would just combine it into one. To address your question, if in an event that repairs, build up equity, this and that, I guess it all comes down to how you carve it out in a way, right? Because the reality is you still need to fund to buy or to refinance up to that amount, the value. So it's just a matter of like how you would present it to the recipient, because the obligation to repay is still to us. So we still technically have an ability to tweak the collateral if in an event that the borrower encounters a problem. It's just a matter of like how you will craft the legal documents right now.
I mean, I
But we
think,
could have an A and a B note
Yeah.
if there's a problem. We can
Yeah, if there
make it. Go ahead.
yeah, if there was an investor, right, at the end of this. that
That's what I was
investor would get
thinking.
the A note, and then the B note would be, you know, a CHFA investment thing. But
That's what I was
think-
picturing
Oh,
is
okay.
that it's, you know, for something less than the 100, whatever that looked like, it's just easier to invest in. But I totally think this program is in order and something that we desperately need. You know, as Lisa's pointing out, where else can you live for these prices? And you get the home ownership title as well. It's just it's a great program.
I like your idea though, because you reserve the right to at some point securitize these. I mean, who knows? Maybe some investor
That's-
wants to buy.
You know, if you had 80% of these things and they're going well, I think that they become very marketable. We would probably have to hang on to that last piece. But like Hazim's saying, we have to be careful that we don't make it so overly complicated. Look at the prices already, you know, just with recording fees, you add, you know, another couple hundred and stuff on it. So, but that's an interesting way to go too, is that if we sense that some of these, maybe we're ready to go to step in with A and B, you know, so.
I think it's a good thing to keep in mind.
Can I ask a question? With the refinance, what is it that, do we know what mobile home owners or manufactured home owners are looking for when they are refinancing? Why?
They would be looking for a lower payment on the home itself, especially when rents are increasing. And
Yeah.
it seems like the lot rents have gone up quite a bit, which I hear is due to the taxes going up. They've had to pass that on to the mobile home owners.
Yep. Do we allow them, if you have somebody who is almost entirely paid off their mobile home, do we allow them to cash out a bit to that is to take out a higher mortgage to have that cash for their life needs?
I hadn't considered that. I don't see why we wouldn't. I guess I should have probably specified that. I didn't even give that any thought, but I don't see why we would. And as long as the loan to value is still there, which obviously it would be. And I do want to point out that, the newer homes, they don't appreciate the newer manufactured homes. They don't appreciate as much as a traditional single family home, but there is evidence that they do hold their value and or appreciate slightly in value. So just to throw that out there.
Well, we don't prohibit cash out, to your point, Lisa.
No,
We're indifferent, right?
right, exactly. The way we wrote it is very indifferent. So we just didn't specify.
I think that's positive that we don't.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's, unfortunately, there aren't that many areas in Connecticut that, in my understanding, we tried to finance some development of manufactured home parks or, developments. It's a tough business. But it's certainly one that makes so much sense for us. Okay. any
I
more
wonder, Heidi, just because you raised it, I'd like to put a pin in something that perhaps could be subject to future discussion. Nandini and I had an exchange about a really good article in the New York Times about prefabricated housing.
Yeah, I saw that. It was good.
Yeah, and I know that there is, to some extent, activity in Connecticut. It would be really interesting, Pat, to have your team's take on the extent to which that represents, an important new avenue to address the high cost of construction and the low productivity in terms of building housing. I want to share with everybody something that I had to unearth for some speaking I did the other day. And you may know this already, but it's shocking. The situation continues to get worse with regard to rental housing. And I think we just all need to always bear that in mind. You may know that 5% vacancy is considered a tight rental market. The state of Connecticut right now is 3.5% rental vacancy. So I was involved with a workforce provider in Fairfield County, speaking to some of the constraints they face around housing. Employers cannot house people that they need to work the jobs they have available. So it's important that we are just all continuing to think about that and to think creatively about what can be done to expedite housing construction, especially affordable and workforce, but housing construction, period, in the state of Connecticut. So that's not what we're talking about here with manufactured housing, I know, but I would love to hear CHFA's team's considered opinion on manufactured housing, how it's being, or excuse me, prefab housing, how it's being used in Connecticut, and what the potential might be, and whether CHFA could play a role in helping bring that more into the equation.
Yeah, Lisa, I'd love to respond. Do we want to finish this up, this particular topic, and then we can take it up after the vote? Because it's a multifamily comment, and this is a single family presentation.
Okay, I hear you. All right. Does anybody have any more questions about this memo in specific? Or combining the two policies and offering these attractive rates and terms. Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Lisa. A second?
Second,
Okay, thanks. All right, Dawn?
Cindy Butts, Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWeingart,
Aye.
Claudio Gualtieri, Commissioner Mascara Bruno, Matt Puglisi,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
aye.
Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm not sure how we go about getting into this discussion. We have one other agenda item, which is just the minutes, which we need to accept or correct if there are any changes. Why
I'll
don't we
make
do
a
that?
motion that we approve the minutes,
Okay, of May 29th.
May
Is there
29th.
any- Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody, any changes or concerns? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Terrific. Minutes are opposed. And then, yeah, Pat, I mean, it was a really interesting article, and I meant to talk about it when we got together. I think a field trip is in order to some of these fun places that they are doing it.
So a couple of things. I'm going to blend in the mobile home park structure, because a couple of weeks ago I was down in Naugatuck looking at a mobile home park that they're converting over to home ownership, looking to use a prefab modular model. So there's 130, I think, spaces, and they're converting them over to long, narrow, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes. They have one model right now. They are struggling to find financing, conventional financing from commercial banks. So Nandini and I have been working with them to try to put something together. I'm just waiting for a budget from them. So there's one application of prefabricated. We love the model because it's a home ownership model that we don't typically participate in terms of developments, right? So this gives us a foray into that area. On the multifamily side, we are scheduled to go look at a project in New London. It's a developer called Vessel Technologies. I'm not sure if anybody has heard of them. They do a prefabricated style. It looks very, very interesting. Although I really I want to get my hands on it and see what it feels like and what the spaces feel like. It is a very simple model. They have put all of their amenity money. They don't provide any amenities, no gym space, no community rooms. These are just apartments. But they've put that money into, they've done two things. They're lower in the market on their rents because they don't have the amenities. And then they put their money into things like HVAC, they want to make sure the environment that people live in, it's the highest quality environment that they can live in, you know, heat and hot water, all that stuff. All of the interiors are this sort of modular construction. So there are wall panels, which is an interesting concept because the way they explained it is if they have a problem with electrical or plumbing, they remove the wall panel, they fix the problem, they put the wall panel back. It takes a couple of hours in their experience. They've got a couple of these projects down in New Jersey. And so it's not ripping apart sheetrock, fixing the problem, and then having to, you know, compound
Backhoe,
and
right,
sand and paint and compound, right? So, and similarly with their kitchens, interesting concept, their kitchens, they don't have any dedicated ADA units because they're all ADA compliant. All of their units meet all zoning across the country, all zoning requirements across the country. And so if they have a former ADA resident move out and then a non-ADA resident moves in, their counters raise. They can raise their counters and lower their counters to meet those demands of ADA residents. If there's any damage done to any of their kitchens, they can change out a kitchen in a day. So it's all modular. So Nandini, the commissioner, and I are, and Vin Bergen, our Build for CT person, are scheduled, or we were supposed to go last month, but they had to cancel. They had a problem with electric. So we're scheduled to go see a model unit up there. So we are looking into that, and we're looking into modular multifamily construction as well. Last year, Jennifer from our tech services went with some members of DOH up to Westchester Modular up in Armenia, New York, to take a look at their operation. And there is a new modular construction company in Hamden, Connecticut. Can't remember the name of it. I think it's like All American or something like that. But once we get a little further with this mobile home park conversion, the developer of that park and I want to go and pay a visit to the Hamden company as well. So it is on our radar, and it's something that we're trying to do. Also, on last Monday, we had a luncheon. We sponsored a luncheon for 70. We had 70 people show up for a developer kind of conversation, just to see what people are experiencing in the market, see if there's anything people are doing to try to, you know, reduce costs and where the big costs are coming in. We're going to keep that conversation going with them. It was very, very well received by our developer population. So just everybody's realizing the same things with increases in utilities, insurance, and taxes. And then just, you know, some developers are moving to a more like a prototype model where they have a standard set of drawings that they can replicate from site to site as they go on. There's a lot of economies in doing something like that. They don't have to keep paying for the architectural drawings. Not much else, you know, in terms of architectural. I'd like to see a little bit more creativity out of the architectural industry, but we're not getting that just yet. I think that's a lot. I'm sorry, I went off on a lot of stuff because we're very excited about some of these prospects and trying to find new ways to get an old job done.
And Pat, I think that Vessel is building here in Rocky Hill, just down the street from my office.
Yes.
The site, I think, has been cleared. So if that's what's going up there, it might be interesting, Heidi, at some point, if Nandini, Pat, if you think it's worth actually taking a field trip. It's not as exciting as going to Sweden, but
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah, well, I'm up for that, but it's 5 minutes from CHFA. So it might be interesting at some point to keep that in mind if that's something we want to explore.
Yeah, we're working with Vessel on for Build for CT on both. They've got a finished product in New London. They just finished up. They're not even renting yet, but they're finishing up units now. And then Rocky Hill is a little bit behind that. I'm not sure that they've even broken ground yet. I know they have that they've got approvals in place, but they're working on with us on, for Build for CT on both of those. Their model is really kind of directed at that market. So they're, as I said, their rents are a couple of $100 below market because they're not offering amenities, and they are targeting that 20 to 29-year-old group. And they've been very successful. They have very, very low turn and very, very high occupancy in their New Jersey projects.
It'll be interesting too, though, to see if we could do that on an ownership basis. I mean, the rentals, you know, you can rent it low and then they keep raising it and eventually you're, you know, at market. But if we could somehow translate those products into a condominium or an ownership basis where you could buy in lower, that would be nice too.
We are open to all forms of financing for
Yeah.
all forms of housing.
For everybody, exactly.
For everybody. And just mindful that with the Build for CT, we're getting 20 and 30%, sometimes 40% of the units restricted at those levels. So even if they do raise some of the rents, ours are restricted. They have a ceiling on them for the workforce housing. And while
Can I just jump in really quick? I just want to say, I agree with everything you said. I also want to say that there's kind of a reckoning that I think is going to come at some point regarding, like, how do you view affordable housing? Like, in terms of, like, you don't want to go back to the way public housing looked, right? Nobody wants the institutional kind of buildings that used to exist. And we're moving away, but are we moving into like an area where you've got, like, just, sort of costs that are going up unmitigated? Like, how do you manage that and yet produce a quality product, taking into account that, like Pat was talking about, the fact that there aren't amenities in that model. Forget the name of it. What's it called?
Vessel.
For some reason, I can't remember that particular word, but and so, there's not controversy, but there's a discussion to be had about what actually should the state or pay for in terms of like appropriate, safe, stable, affordable housing that is, that meets a lot of needs and checks the boxes, but isn't out of control cost wise. And so I think there has to be a meeting of the minds. And I think Pat and I are really open to the idea of looking at all these different prototypes and models and saying it works because at this point in time, you need all different kinds of housing, right? You can't just build low-income housing tax credit type housing. You can't just build mobile homes, and you have to kind of look at all these different ways that we can create supply and meet the needs. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I just
just what's really interesting to Lisa's point too. So we had a meeting with Representative Courtney last week. An electric boat needs homes for 2,000 new workers. I mean, so we look at that. He challenges us. How do we do that? First, I have to look and say, where are we going to get permitted sites to build on, right? That's first. But then we have a real challenge in this state as we grow. That's one company, right? They landed a couple government contracts going forward. But those are the types of numbers that we really have to swing and make work in this state. So yes, all these conversations are very relevant. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. Nandini, you're absolutely right. We need to many approaches, and we have to look at so many things closely.
I want to second that, Greg, but I also just want us to remember our mission is low and moderate income people, many of whom are never going to be homeowners in terms of the data in America. And there's no shame in that. They aren't going to be homeowners, but they do deserve rental property that is adequate. And there's an urgency. And I just want to reflect that back to everybody because we are on the front lines of doubling numbers of calls about homelessness and housing insecurity in our state. So, there's a very significant urgency to this. I think these longer term questions are all important because Nandini, you're right. You build it now in the crisis and you are going to live with it for 20 or 30 or 50 years. That's very true. But there's an incredible urgency that I'm afraid may escape us as we try and plod along and be thoughtful. I think we need to actually pull out stops and be building more housing very urgently right now. So I agree, and that's why we're so glad to have you as a leader of this organization, Aditi, because you are thoughtful. But I just want us to not forget the urgency, which is at a fever pitch for people who need housing right now in our state.
So the, one other, I completely agree with all that, and we feel that pressure, I guess, that responsibility, that obligation every day, and we're working to find new ways to create affordable housing. So to Nandini's point, the one thing I didn't mention about Vessel is that on average, their units cost around $200,000 to $220,000 a unit to produce. That's really the biggest point here. What Nandini was saying is, I think the pendulum has swung from the concrete barracks type of buildings that we saw in the 60s and 70s over to the much, I think some of our projects have more adornments than regular market rate developments at this point. And we have to find a happy medium. Is it worth putting in a gym, right? So Vessel, Josh Levy from Vessel, he's one of the principals. He said they have a 600 unit project in Philadelphia. It's a market rate product. He's like, less than 30% of the people that occupy that building use the gym. So our thought is reduce people's rent, give them a little bit more residual income to play around with. And then if they want to go to the gym, they can go to the gym. They want to go do yoga, they can go do yoga. They want to spend their money however they want. It gives them more residual income. Really love the concept. Somehow we have to find out how we get closer to that model where we can, instead of spending $500,000 or $600,000 per unit to get all these extras, what is, you said, you used the word adequate. What we need to define adequate and try to build toward adequate so that we can build more units, because as far as I'm concerned, more units is more important at this time than more of the extras. And some of our money is going to that extra, and we're trying to figure ways to get away from that.
Yeah, Pat, I want to second that. And I'd like to ask if it would be possible for your team to look at what data exists around the use of gyms and common rooms and these things, because I know we have classically put a value on that. But even before you said that, Pat, I just visited my niece in New York, and they have these great spaces. And even in New York, where spaces at a premium, no one uses the fancy common room that they spend a lot of money to build. Now that's anecdotal, but I'm wondering if there is data out there that then we could incorporate into our thinking on this. It seems like something valuable, but I don't think that any of us have seen these spaces treated with the value that we're attributing to them.
Yeah, Lisa, having been out there on that side, what I can tell you is it's more for marketing than anything else. So when you're marketing to competitively for market rate units, those are the selling points. And that's why it's been, since we've started doing a lot more mixed income, we've seen that amenity package start to grow in our projects. So we do have to give some thought, and I will see if we have any data from our existing portfolio on usage, what they're seeing for usage.
Yeah, there's 2 more units you could put in.
Right. Right.
Okay, it's
So-
all really interesting. Keep us posted. Sounds like there's some things that we could be looking at or looking forward to.
All right, and then Heidi, if I can just get one more second while I'm talking.
Sure.
So William Warren was approved last month, and then it got tabled by the board, and I just wanted to address that. So I've had conversations with the first selectman from Woodbridge. Woodbridge has decided that they are going to withdraw their approval of Tyler Smith Alpha from taking assumption of the lease. So that essentially means that we're not going to consider him anymore as a potential owner. I do want to say that the legal department and I addressed all the lawsuits. Scott Hunter, the public commenter from last month, provided me with a list of the lawsuits that he found. Since 21, there were 57. His list had 58, but one of them was a repeat. So there were 57 total lawsuits on all his entities. 50 of them were plaintiff suits where he was suing for collection of monies owed and just standard owner type of lawsuits. Of the 7 that they were defendants in, 5 of them were already settled or withdrawn. The 2 remaining, one was a claim against one of the companies for removing stuff from a storage locker. And then the other one was a contract claim about a purchase and sale agreement between 2 entities. So, and Tyler Smith, the individual, wasn't named in either one of those 2 suits. There really wasn't, so there was no discrimination. We didn't find any type of discrimination suits. There was one code violation, but that, again, that ended up being withdrawn. But there was nothing that rose to the level that would make me say, we can't consider this person for, as a potential owner. I think what soured, Woodbridge was the public, the YouTube video and the comments that this potential owner had made online. So that's where we stand right now. I just wanted an update because there was questions.
It's been withdrawn totally, so we're not going to revisit it right now.
No, we're working with both John Capone, the owner, who is very, very understanding about the whole situation, and we're working with the town of Woodbridge to try to replace it. I've had some conversations with people about maybe bringing a nonprofit in to take it over, maybe do a 4% transaction, get it, so we're kind of in a tough position because Mr. Capone, who's been a good borrower of ours for 30+ years, is trying to retire and get out of it. And now we're delaying that process for him. But I'll keep you guys updated as we make progress.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Any other comments? All right. Well, we somehow managed to fill up our hour. So thanks. Thanks, everyone. And I guess we'll talk to you on Thursday at the board meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Lisa. Second it. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Heidi, I think we need just minutes on the agenda to keep it under an hour.
Yeah, we always figure out a way. All right. We'll try
I like
that.
it though. I like it.